Hi, friends. I'm Steve, and I am here with Marvin Brubacher. Marvin Brubacher. I met you, Marvin, back in about 2002. I looked it up back when I was at Heritage College. I kind of had a meandering college experience and was there for a year. And I have a I have a vivid memory of just your kind-hearted uh, facial expressions. Maybe that sounds odd, but just I just really appreciated your care for me, not just as a student, but as a person. And so it was so from there, just seeing your work as the president of Heritage College, uh, and uh, and now you've since moving on from Heritage, you've joined an organization called MentorLink,
Right.
and you've had a deep and passionate desire to mentor leaders and train others. And
Mhm.
so I want to thank you, first of all, for taking some time to talk about this idea of mentoring because it got me thinking when we at Family Life Canada, we have a marriage mentor training coming up on November 30th. And if you are interested in mentoring others in that specific context of marriage, we encourage you to come to that. And my first thought was, who could I talk to about mentoring? And Marvin Brubaker came to mind. So yeah, you're with this organization called MentorLink. I'd love to talk with you a little bit this morning about mentoring and the value of it. And so tell me, Marvin, just a little bit about your background, your maybe a little bit about your spiritual journey and some of your experiences.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for inviting me to have this conversation with you. And it's really great to hear how God's moved you into a new role and a new
Mm.
ministry and how he's providing for you to really embrace this and move forward. So thanks very much for the opportunity to be here. The idea of mentoring in my life began when I was a teenager in Christian Service Brigade.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember that whole organization, but it was set up on a
I
on
do.
an army motif, And so the captain and I was the brigade person that was like the highest person in the
Hmm.
teenage. So that's called the sergeant. So the captain said to me one day, as I was working on the achievement program, I want you to write down what it is you want to do with your life. And I thought about it. He said, I don't want to, I don't care what vocation you think. What does he want to do with your life? Write
Hmm.
that down. And so I spent some time thinking about it. And I basically wrote down that I want my life to be a maturing, growing Christian life that's attractive to others so that someday I can help them move and do things way beyond anything I'd ever do in my life. Well, at
Hmm.
the core, that's mentoring, Steve. It's the life on life, one-on-one. You can mentor in small groups, but you can't mentor big groups.
Hmm.
It's very intentional. It's conversational. It's interactive. So I started back then thinking about that and doing it. So long before I was ever in professional ministry, I began to do this practice I have of looking around my circle of influence and finding some younger people and saying, do you want to go on a journey together?
Right. Wow. Cool.
And some time. So that started. And then as you know, uh, I was involved in a Bible college down in the States. My wife and I were residence directors with a large men's residence, 280 guys. So I got to do a lot of
Yeah.
mentoring there.
Uh-huh.
And then God brought us back to Canada to start a Bible college. And so I was a youth pastor at the same time. So in the youth ministry, I was mentoring younger leaders, then in school, then as a lead pastor for 10 years, and then back to school. I always had this passion
Hmm.
to find some faithful people. That's what Paul told Timothy, right? Find some faithful people. They have some
Right.
character quality and invest in them so they can do it with others. So the idea of mentoring should be a personal investment in another person's life with the idea that that person's going to do it with someone else.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit of my background. I've had wonderful opportunity. I've been in ministry over 50 years now, and that's paid professional ministry. And it's just been a rich privilege. And literally, Steve, there are people all over the world that I've had the privilege of spending time with and investing in their lives. And right up today, right now, I still have this ministry with between 25 and 30 men I meet with monthly,
Okay.
online person. Plus, then I do seminars teaching people how to think about biblical mentoring and how to engage that in their locations, their settings. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate this opportunity to explore this idea with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so what is it about MentorLink? So when you kind of came on with MentorLink, what is MentorLink? What is it about? Why did you join that ministry
Yeah,
specifically?
MentorLink was started in the year 2000 out of a conversation of about 14 leaders of major missions around the world that had worked together in the co-mission that was part of the adventure in Russia right after the wall came down. We won't go into
Mm,
all that detail, but this group worked together in that. And so they were scanning the world, what was going on in the world once that project was done. And they came to the realization that while the number of Christians was exponentially growing, and same with churches, leadership training was flatlined. And so they began to explore why was that the case? And out of that exploration, that discussion, they spent a weekend together. They came to realize it's pretty fundamental. The reason is existing leaders were not raising up younger leaders. They weren't investing in them. In fact, as they discussed it, often the opposite was true. The existing leaders actually suppressed younger leaders because they were a threat.
mm,
They
right.
were creative. They upset the apple cart. They weren't, cut out of the same cloth.
Hmm.
So this group said to Stacy Reinhardt, do something to solve it. Start something. And so that was the start of MentorLink. And it started with a tool called passing it on. How do we take what needs to happen and pass it on to others? At the core, Steve, we have five fundamental transformational values of the heart that people need to take seriously if they're going to get engaged in this kind of ministry, so that we move people, as we say, from the left to the right, from the left-sided leadership, that's their basic normal understanding of leadership from the culture in which they are. And every culture has a leadership style. And if it's unredeemed leadership style, then to move it to actually a kingdom leadership style that Jesus established.
Hmm.
You remember in the New Testament when John and James came and were saying to the Lord, like we'd like to be on the left hand and right hand when you enter the kingdom. And he said to them, it's not the way it works in my kingdom. Actually said, not so with you. And that not so with you principle guides our thinking, that the way you think about leadership compared to kingdom, not so. So these five are things like you have to change from a focus on building your own success to
Right.
building God's kingdom. And to do your own success, you have to control the environment. Well, in God's kingdom, it's not controlled environment. It's an outline, a way of expressing grace in community. And you get these ideas. There's five transformational values at the core of this passing it on. And then some details. How do you find mentors? How do you find mentees? So on. So they started, the first time it was held was in Columbia, South America, post Lausanne conference back then. And since that time, it's just been one person heard about, hey, I'll try this. And so it's just word of mouth. We don't advertise.
Hmm.
And today there's a big network. There's probably 40 to 50 people that are using the tools very intentionally in their leadership training environments. And that's just exponentially growing. And so in in small but substantive ways, God's allowed it to build. So it's just a network. Everybody raises their own support. There's no head office, each country. So we network. We have a leadership group that kind of gives some guidance to it
Yeah.
from
Right.
8 different countries in the world and meet once a month. But that's kind of MentorLink. And so the
Yeah.
key thing is, and we'll mention at the end again, we have a website, all the tools we've created, and we've got multiple tools to help. They're all on there and they're all free. And you can make as many copies as you want. You just can't change them. So they are copyrighted. but you can make multiple copies. So that's kind of, you got this group that kind of guides the thing forward. It's all word of mouth. It's all and uh, and then you have a website that has the tools. And
Right.
so,
So I just want to back up a little bit. You've mentioned, the followers of Jesus and the not so with you, and something about the leaders that were actually suppressing the younger leaders and this different way of thinking. And in no way do I want to disparage the church, but sometimes I see the church not doing discipleship, but doing programs or events. I think you know what I mean. With
mhm.
mentorship, this really highlights the value of that discipleship calling that we have as believers, that Jesus really pours into a few or pours into one at a time. And I'd love to hear more from you about what the value of mentoring really is for the church today, and with Family Life Canada for families
Right,
today.
right.
Yes, we want to train and develop leaders in all different kinds of avenues, but for families too, how can we come alongside marriages, parents, families, and leaders that lead these initiatives? And what does that mean for discipleship today?
Steve, you just asked me about 10 questions there. So
Yeah,
I don't know where to start and finish, but let me just start with the Jesus thing, okay?
yeah,
Um, we try to follow the ways of Jesus in everything we do. And that sounds very super spiritual, but it's a passion with MentorLink.
yeah.
And so back to the start, Jesus left us with a commission based on two commandments, right? So the two commandments you all know about loving God and loving others. But then the commission was take this message and as you go through the world, make disciples. And the way you make disciples is you bring them to a place where they identify with this kingdom
Hmm.
through baptism, and then they enter into a lifelong learning experience.
Hmm.
And the lifelong learning is to help people obey everything that he said. So back to the question then about how does this work? How do we make this sensible? Jesus' model was that interpersonal relationships, small, intentional, but impersonal relationships. So it's not a program, like you said. It's life on life. That those should be the heart of the discipleship journey. So just a little point. This is what I believe. Not everybody totally agrees with me, but mentoring is a tool. It's a way in which we help people on their discipleship journey. So the key is helping people become disciples that are
Hmm.
growing and developing. And your personal relationship with them and helping them on this journey is not the only tool God uses.
Hmm.
He uses himself. He uses the Spirit of God is very actively, the Word of God, other people, experiences, all these things God uses to help people grow to become more like Jesus. That's number one. And to find out why Jesus saved them. What was the reason? According to Ephesians 2:10, this is an eternal purpose. We are saved so the Lord can make us his special work of art, his workmanship, his masterpiece. So that's him developing us to be like him so
Hmm.
that we can do the good works he designed for us to do before the world began. Can you believe that?
Hmm.
So every believer should be able to look in the mirror and say, God saved me for a purpose. What is that purpose? Well, first, it's to become more like Jesus. And then, secondly, to find out what it is that he wants that person to do. Well, you can't do that in mass groups.
Right.
So Jesus models that for us. He had a lot of followers. You understand that? His total ministry experience was about 3.5 years. It's at least halfway through. Some would suggest two-thirds of the way through that 3 year experience, where he went up in a mountain and prayed and came down and selected 12 to be his key followers. He calls them his apostles then. So you have all these followers, all these disciples, these people, they're following because that was the rabbi motif of that culture, right? The rabbi gathered followers. They listened to his teaching. He'd test them a little bit. He'd send out 70 to see how they did, but then he chose 12. And then by the end of his time, so that's maybe 18 months, maybe just a year before he left. And then as it moves towards the end of his time, three seem to rise to the surface as the key people he's investing in: Peter,
Mhm.
James, and John. And so this motif, this idea, this thing of personal relationships, sorting through followers to find the people that are very serious, that the kingdom could be um, extended through their efforts. You have to invest in those people. So mentoring is good all along that journey, but it's especially helpful, real intentional mentoring, when you get to the people that you can see have been given by God a quality of character, because they worked on that, and a
Mhm.
capacity to do this with others. You want to invest in those people. So when you're doing your marriage mentoring for I would always think we're doing something very important, but we're doing it so that the couple we are mentoring could mentor another couple.
Mhm.
So they could do it with someone else,
Mhm.
because that's the way God's kingdom grows. It's a multiplication, not an addition factor.
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of given you a lot there. You maybe want to feed back. It's very important that we get away from this mass production kind of methodology. It just does not
Yeah.
work. But
Yeah.
one in a small group, you help people. How do
Mhm.
you need to change? How does your life need to develop to be more like Jesus? And have you discovered what it is God wants you to do? I'd explore that with couples. Do they know? Why is God bringing them together? What's the
Yeah.
purpose of that
Purpose.
marriage on the earth,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Have you figured that out? Are you fulfilling it?
Mhm.
So it's a wonderful thing what you're doing. I think the starting point of a Christian life and marriage are two of the major times when people make huge decisions of purpose in their life. So
Very significant. And then, as we talk about multiplication and God's kingdom, kingdom being spread into future generations, my background's pastor of children's
right.
ministry. How I
Right.
see it is parents have this massive calling to disciple their own kids. And so when marriages don't have mentors, and when parents don't have mentors or guides or people coming alongside them to help them explore what that looks like and what that means, there's just such um, a natural way of discipleship that is neglected if that's not happening. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
so natural because how much time do parents spend with their kids? How much time do husbands spend with their wives? That discipleship goes back and forth on a
Mhm.
daily, hourly basis. And these people need to be equipped and supported and loved. Um, let's maybe talk about just real quick, what would be a skill, or I know you have a full-on leaders covenant that leaders can look up on the website, but maybe there's a skill or like for a mentor to come alongside another mentor, and then we can kind of wrap it up with what we want to direct people to. But what would be one or two skills that really that mentors really need to lean into?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I could say anything more than the two greatest skills beyond being relational. In other words, you have to love people. That's not a
Mm,
skill. That's a command, right? We're to love
right.
one another.
Okay.
So that just, but it's on the basis of that. You have to love people.
Mhm.
And if that's not where you've developed so far in your journey, then come alongside someone who can help you learn how to love other people. And that's not easy for some people, Steve, to be honest. I mean, they've been damaged, they've been hurt, they've been
Mm,
suppressed, they've been rejected, all these things. So, how do you learn to embrace God's love in such a way you can spill
right.
over to love? But based on that being fairly healthy, okay, I
Yeah.
don't want to pass that assumption. The two
Sure.
greatest skills are active listening and learning to ask good questions. So those are the two greatest skills of mentoring. And by active listening, I mean the whole body language. Most people don't realize that the actual words that are communicated, the words are only about 15% of the communication factor.
Hmm.
How you say the words, the tone of voice, and all that is another 35%. And then the rest of your body language is 55% of the communication. So it's really important you do it in person as much as possible. You can see body language, you can listen to
Right.
tone of. So, but in the midst of that, to listen carefully to what the person is actually saying. Most of us only listen long enough so we can say what we want to say.
Hmm. And I think that's especially hard for teachers and leaders.
Leaders are they're terrible. They're paid to talk, right?
Yeah.
So you listen long enough, and as soon as that other person takes a little breath, you dive in with what you want to say. Instead of pausing and saying, what is it that God was saying in this conversation? So in the act of listening, to be thinking about the fact this conversation is a three-way conversation. The mentee is listening to God in the conversation, the mentor is listening, and they're listening to each other.
Hmm.
What is being said? So communication is listening and talking. So first of all, we understand we're listening carefully. God is speaking in the midst of this conversation.
Yeah.
And then you listen well enough so you can ask good questions that are open questions, not yes,
Mm.
no questions. And one of the things I've learned over the years, and this is maybe helpful for the parents that you're going to speak with, Steve, is try never to ask a question that starts with why with your kids. Because when you say why, it raises up in themselves a defense mechanism. They have to defend their person. They're a person. They got reasons, you know.
Right.
So you can always rework that question to when you did this, what were you thinking? Or how did you think that was going to accomplish your goal and stuff? Instead of, but see, you have to think. You can't just react,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is the reaction. Why'd you do that? So you listen carefully so you can ask a good question that allows for mutual understanding. And remember, the conversation goes both ways. I've learned more from my mentees than any other way in life. Sure, I read the Bible, I read books, all that. But when you're life on life, listening carefully, God speaks to you too.
Yeah.
So it's not just a one-way communication, it's
Yeah.
both. Anyway, so I hope that's
Yeah.
helpful to us
Yeah.
is
That's really beautiful to
yeah.
think through the growth process um, in in our faith and in our journey, and how rich and rewarding it is to um, not just stand aside and kind of teach from a distance, but to really be vulnerable with other people and share that journey. So it's simple in some ways. Mentoring is an opportunity to listen and have a conversation and just share life, share stories. It all is also very difficult because that love base has to be there and that character formation
Mhm.
has to be there as in terms of are we ourselves growing in our own relationship with Jesus? And so that is
So
a
you talked
daily,
about skills. The other thing I just want to mention before we pass on,
sure.
the most powerful thing a mentor has is the modeling of his life.
Yeah.
So it's communication and modeling. So if your own life is not whole, not perfect, I didn't say, but there's a
Hmm.
holistic nature
Yeah.
to it. People respect. Then the words you say, even good listening skills, that don't mean much to the
Hmm.
person. But
Yeah.
when they can see there's this real love and you model what it is to be a listener, to be a maturing Christian, not a
Right.
mature Christian, but a maturing Christian. They can see you're actively engaged and growing too. That modeling is so powerful in a
Hmm.
mentoring relationship. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you know, people like in your ministry, if a couple's been married for say 20 years or more, they've learned a lot of how to get along and how to communicate with each other and so on. There's a modeling that they can demonstrate to these young couples. Or if, you know, the couple's 20 and they're having problems 20 years old, then you need to have someone that's been married like my wife and I for 55 years, you know, like there's that modeling part is very critical. And I can tell you this, your mentees, the people you're mentoring, they can smell hypocrisy
Hmm.
and sham.
Hmm.
And so you have to let the walls down, and you have to expose your heart in the
Yeah.
conversation. You have to say, this is where I'm struggling. This is where I've struggled. This is what I've learned. Some people have a hard time becoming authentic
Yeah.
and open and honest. And so these are all related, right? You understand what I'm saying, but the two greatest skills are listening, so you can ask good questions in the context of love and modeling.
Hmm.
So anyway, I hope that's been
Yeah.
helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate how you worded that and kind of made distinctions between the character of a person and the skills, because anyone can learn skills, but that character is so such a critical part of
Right.
passing on what we have to share, and we have the greatest news to share,
Mhm.
and so we're yeah, we just see in terms of the family life side, we see so much value in sharing how Christ can change a relationship. Christ can solidify a relationship. And man, the more we get people mentoring other people, uh, we see it in the research too. The quality of those relationships go way up because they have people that they can lean on and
Right.
turn to and have support. But I do want to wrap up, but I want to quickly just again remind people listening there is a marriage mentoring training. You can go to the Family Life Canada website and find the events. It's November 30th. It's a Saturday afternoon, and you can take some time. It's a fun, interactive training that gives you a practical experience, the reasons for mentoring, an interactive example to practice mentoring right in the training session. And if you have people in mind that you're thinking of, I would love to mentor, but you just want some basic skills. I think that's true of a lot of people. We want to help other people, but we just don't know the next steps to doing that.
Right.
So I encourage you to come and check out that marriage mentoring training. Marvin, if there's anything else you'd like to say, if there's anything next for you in your ministry, or if there's anything you would like these listeners to do, is there a call to action? Is there something that you want them to look into more? Let us know.
Well, I would just say to wind my side up of this conversation, and again, thank you for allowing me. I just want to say what you're doing, if that had existed when my wife and I started on our marriage journey, it would probably have saved us some hard lessons we had to learn along the way. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I praise God that there are organizations like yours that are caring for marriages, because that's the fundamental building block of our society, our healthy families.
Mm,
And so
thank you
praise
for that.
God for
Yeah.
if they want
Yeah.
to look at some tools or some ideas that we might be able to offer, our website is MentorLink. So MENTORLINK, MentorLink. Maybe you can put it up somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'll link it. Hmm. Hmm.
mentorlink.org/Canada.
Very good.
And I would just say go to the resources tab and look at something we've created called the mentoring process. And you'll see a diagram that God gave me the idea, and then some little tips. How do you start? When do you know you're done? So that one page or so thing, there's some little videos connected to it. That's one. And the other tool, I would say, if you feel God's calling you to this leadership role, you've mentioned already the leader's covenant. It's 10 aspirational statements of what it is to be a Christian leader. I will, I will, I will, with a little paragraph or two about that topic and then some Bible verses. So you could explore that. Um, anyway, there's lots more on there, but I won't
Yeah.
bore people with that information.
Yeah, but go to that website for sure. And if you're a church leader or someone who wants to get mentoring going in your church, this is the place to go to learn more about developing that ministry
And
for
I would be
sure.
happy to, anybody could call me, email me. I'll have a conversation just like this with them
Yeah,
to listen to what they want to say and the questions they have. And
yeah.
so on there's my information. My information's on the website. So
And
yeah.
just for clarity, we're both in Ontario, Canada, but you're an international ambassador for
Yeah.
MentorLink. Is that correct?
Yeah. In the 25 or 30 people I mentor, Steve, there's people in Africa, there's people in South America, there's like India, I've got a bunch of guys. So it's just a really big blessing. We do it all
Yeah.
through the world. But
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation. And I think we both mutually thank our ministry partners as well for the
Mhm.
opportunities that we have to just serve people and
Mhm.
care for people and people that come alongside us and help make these ministries run and go and keep God's kingdom expanding. So thankful for you, thankful for all our friends, and yeah, let's keep mentoring people. God
Amen.
bless.
God bless you.
Okay.